Hello and welcome to this DaVinci Resolve tutorial. Firstly, before I start the tutorial, this video is aimed at people that already know how to edit, so people coming from programs like Adobe Premiere or iMovie will find this video helpful, but there is an assumption that you do already know the basic controls of video editing. Without any further ado, let's go into the tutorial. When you open Resolve, you'll be greeted with the Project Manager. I already have several projects here, but you won't have anything, just the untitled project. First of all, we're going to click New Project, give our project a name, then click Create. Resolve is going to open in the Edit page, but we're going to use the menu at the bottom of the screen to go to the Media page. This is where you can browse the files on your computer to find footage, organize clips into bins, and even sync audio, which I can do a tutorial on if people are interested. But first, before we do any of that, there are some settings that we should change. We're going to open Preferences and then select the User tab. We're going to go to Project Save and Load, and then into the Save Settings section, we're going to make sure that Live Save is enabled. This will effectively auto-save your project as you work, and it's really good if you don't want to lose any of your work if Resolve crashes. Next, click the System tab and then click Memory and GPU. You should be alright leaving this set to auto, but if you get any strange playback or exporting glitches, it's a good idea to change this setting. If you have an Nvidia card, select CUDA. If you have an AMD card, then select OpenCL. As I have a Mac, I'm presented with another option, Metal. Metal is Apple's graphics API, and if you use a Mac that was made approximately 5 to 7 years ago or newer and has a GPU, then Metal is the setting that you want. You can also manually select your GPU in the drop-down menu, although that's only really necessary if you have more than one GPU. That's it for settings right now, so we'll click Save. Now it's time to actually start doing some editing. In the menu on the top left, navigate to a folder that has the footage you want. In the bottom left section, we're going to right-click and create a new bin. Most editors will be familiar with bins. They're very useful for organizing footage in your projects. It's roughly equivalent to a Final Cut Pro event. After we've named our bin, we're going to select all the clips and drag them into the area at the bottom of the screen to add them to our bin. As soon as we do that, a dialog box appears asking if we want to change the frame rate for our project to that of the clips that we're importing. This can be really helpful, but if there's a particular frame rate you want your project to be in, then this can mess those settings up. I'm going to click Change, which will adjust the frame rate of the project, although then I'm going to undo that and show you how to change this setting manually. File, Project Settings, brings up the Project Settings menu. Then, making sure you are in the Master Settings tab, you can adjust the timeline frame rate to whatever value you like, then click Save. After that, we'll add the footage back into the bin. As you can see, the frame rate dialog box only appears once. Next, I'm going to create a second bin and add some more clips into it. I'm selecting the clips by holding down Command and clicking on the clips I want. If you double click on a clip, it appears in the clip viewer on the top right of the page. You can scrub through the clip by dragging the playhead marker around or by using the JKL shortcut keys for reverse, pause and forwards respectively. Now at the bottom of the page, we're going to click on the Cut page. The Cut page does much of the same thing as the Edit page, however the Cut page has more minimalist and quicker controls. On the DaVinci Resolve website, it's shown to be a good option for making quick cuts of your project on set, or for YouTubers and bloggers who don't want to deal with so many options. For now though, we're going to stick to the Edit page. Once again, I can do a tutorial on the Cut page if people are interested. In the Edit page, you can see that the clips we put in the timeline on the Cut page are also here in the Edit page. With this, you could throw together a quick sequence in the Cut page, then refine it later in the Edit page. But for now, we're going to select the master bin in the top left-hand corner, right-click and Timeline, Create New Timeline. We'll give this timeline a name, and then we can start adding clips into it. Just as with the Media page, you can double-click on a clip to display it in the footage browser. The exact same controls for scrubbing through the clip also apply here too. You don't have to put the entire clip in the timeline. You can instead scrub through to the point you want the clip to start, press I to set an in point, then scrub further forwards and press O to set an out point. You can then drag the clip into the timeline and only the section between the in and out points will be added. That clip looks quite small in the timeline, so press Command plus to zoom. You can also use Command minus to zoom out. Now I'm going to repeat this process with some more clips. Instead of dragging the clip into the timeline, you can use the 3 buttons with the timeline icons. They each do various things, such as overwriting a clip in the timeline or replacing a clip in the timeline, but the main one I use is the insert button, which will insert the clip between 2 clips that are already in the timeline. The J, K and L keys will also work for playback in the timeline. DaVinci Resolve is a track-based editor, so by lifting this clip we can create a new track, then drag it to overlap the previous clip. Let's say we just want the audio of this shot of the steam train to overlap. The easiest way to do that is to unlink the clips with the unlink button, then just drag the video track back until it's in line with the end of the dinner shot. Now we can play this back and you can hear the steam train sounds starting before the shot starts, which is a very useful technique for cutting dialogue. For more precise editing, you can turn off snapping with the snapping button that looks a bit like a magnet. With this disabled, the clips will no longer jump on the timeline to the nearest cut. However, I usually prefer to leave snapping on. Now we're going to add another clip to the timeline, but I think it's a bit too long. To fix that, we can click on the clip, move the playhead to where we want the cut to be, then press Command B to cut the clip. Now, selecting the clip on the end, I'm going to press backspace to delete the clip. That looks a little too short now. Press T to select the trim tool, and then by clicking and dragging at the end of the clip, we can extend the beginning whilst keeping the rest of the timeline in place. This will work for other clips too. By clicking and dragging in the middle of the clip, you can adjust when the clip starts and ends without changing the clip's position in the timeline. Playing back the shot of the fireworks, we can see it's in slow motion. It looks cool, but let's say we want to ramp into the slow motion instead. Press Command R to bring up the clip speed controls. Finding the point where we want the speed ramp to take place, we use the speed drop-down menu to select Add Speed Point. This creates 2 separate sections in the clip. In the speed menu in the first clip, we click the drop-down arrow and change the speed to 200%. Playing it back, we can see the changes in speed. If you want to change where the speed point is, then click and drag the grey handle to move the speed point. Next we're going to make it into a ramp instead of a sudden change. Right click on the clip and select Retime Curve. Click the drop down menu for the graph and then check Retime Speed and deselect Retime Frame. Then by clicking on the dot on the graph, we can make the speed change smooth by selecting the Bezier option, which is the one with the curve. And then by dragging the handles we can change how smooth we want the speed ramp to be. There we go, that's much more subtle. Finally, we'll click the cross on the Retime Speed bar and right click, then deselect Retime Curve as we have finished creating our speed ramp. You can always re-enable the controls again later if you want to make more changes. We've already covered some of the timeline tools, but I'm going to cover one more tool, and that is the blade tool. This is essentially the same as pressing Command B, except instead we're going to use a tool to do it instead. Press B to select the blade tool, then click on a clip to cut it at wherever the cursor is positioned. Then press A to go back to the selection tool. Let's say we want to move this clip earlier on in the timeline. By holding Command Shift and then dragging the clip, we can move it around and the timeline will automatically adjust to fit the changes. But let's say that we actually don't want the clip there. If we select the clip and then press delete, the clip is deleted, but the gap that would have been left is automatically closed up. This is really useful for quickly removing shots. As much as transitions are overused, this wouldn't be a complete video if I didn't show you how to use them. They can be found in the Effects library in the top left hand corner, then make sure the Video Transitions tab is selected. From there you can add all the transitions you like, but please try not to go overboard with the video transitions. If instead of a transition you want an effect like a filter, these are also available too. As Resolve is a professional editing program, there really aren't many, as the assumption is you'd create them yourself in the Color and Fusion pages, but there are a few presets to get you going. They can be found in the Open Effects tab. Simply drag the filter onto a clip, then control the settings in the inspector, which can be found in the top right corner. Filter settings can be found in the Open FX tab. Next we're going to cover some very quick and basic Fusion functionality. Fusion is a very powerful compositor and deserves a video all on its own, but I'm going to show you a very quick text masking effect just to give you a rough idea of what to expect. Fusion is node-based, so you have inputs and outputs which you connect up to control what order effects are applied in. It can be a bit confusing at first, but I really enjoy working with nodes. Filters like you find in most Adobe programs are great, especially for still images, but for animation, nodes are hard to beat. Anyway, first I'm going to add some text, then in the inspector I'm going to change some text settings to create this title. Then I'm going to drag the output of the text node into the input of the video node. This means that the text will act as a mask for the video footage. There's a lot more you can do, but for now we'll go back to the edit page. As you can see, our footage now has the text effect applied. We can move the clip up to the next track, then because it has a transparent background, we can add a video clip underneath the shot to act as a background for the text. Now onto my favourite page, the color page. There are far too many controls here for me to go in depth, but I'll do a very quick tour. First, press Command-Shift-W to bring up the color grading scopes. Next, select a clip and start making adjustments. There is a very similar node system to the one found on the Fusion page. Effects are added to the nodes, and the earlier in the chain the node is, the earlier that effect is applied. I'm going to right click in the node area and then click Reset All Grades and Nodes to undo all these changes. Next, I'm going to give the clip a very quick grade. There are so many different ways to adjust the clips, but for now I recommend you start off with the primer as wheels, as I think they're the easiest to use. I'm now adding some very basic color corrections using the primary wheels. Let's say you want to apply changes to several clips at once. Selecting each clip you want to apply the same effects to, and then right click, add into new group. I'm going to give the group a name, then in the node area make sure I've selected group post clip. Don't worry about all the different settings there for now. The main two you'll use are clip, which only affects one clip, and group post clip, which affects all the clips in the group. Next, in the library on the right hand side of the screen, I'm going to add Film Convert. Just drag and drop it over the node. The settings for Film Convert can be changed in the Settings tab. Resolve also has a graph editor that can be used for primary corrections. Simply click to add a point on the graph and then drag to adjust the exposure of the clip. Under the menu that says Custom, there are several other graphs that are incredibly useful for performing secondary corrections. I'm going to choose a hue versus sat graph. I can click on the yellow stripes on the train in the clip viewer, which will automatically add a point to the graph. Then by dragging the point upwards, I can increase the saturation of only that yellow color. The possibilities are endless with all these secondary correction graphs. Okay, nearly there. The second to last page is the Fairlight page. This is where you're going to do your audio work. I'm going to go back to the media page and grab a clip of me talking so I can show you some very basic dialogue processing. I'm going to add that clip to the timeline, then go back to the Fairlight page. I'm going to press Shift-Z to resize the timeline so that I can see everything. Then by clicking and dragging, I've selected all the clips, then right-click, Normalize Audio Levels. I'm going to set the target level to -3, then check Independent and then click Normalize. This will then adjust all the clip's volumes so that they're roughly at -3 decibels. Because a lot of these lenses were designed to be manually focused, the focus ring on the front has a much greater range of motion than of a modern still lens. Next, I'm going to work on making my voice sound a bit better. In the channel section at the right hand side of the screen, I'm going to double click the dynamics panel to bring up the controls. Next, I'm going to add a limiter and a compressor. I'm not that knowledgeable in audio post-production, but I know enough to do some very basic adjustments here to make the dialogue a bit clearer. Once again, if you'd like me to cover this in a little more depth, then please let me know in the comments section down below. Once I've experimented around with the controls a bit, mainly the makeup and threshold for the limiter and the threshold for the compressor, I'm going to close the menu, up the focus distance markings. And this Minolta zoom lens has a speed booster-esque adapter which unfortunately results in a ton of... I'm reading the script off my iPad and you can tell this was getting a bit late because I've written, finally add a dessert. Yes, if you're doing audio production, what you need is some good dessert. Finally, I'm going to add a de-esser to remove some of the sibilance in the audio. Click the plus button which is a little above the dynamics panel and select de-esser. For now, I'm going to leave all the controls on the default settings and close this control panel, and that's it for now with the dialog processing. Finally, it's time to export our project, and to do that we're going to the last page, the deliver page, and there's our finished timeline at the bottom. In the top left hand corner, I'm going to name this video and make sure single clip is selected. Individual clips is very useful for round tripping color grades, but that's definitely a subject for another video. I'm going to leave the format as QuickTime, but I am going to change the codec in the drop down menu to H.265, as it's a newer, more efficient codec. Just before we export, go into the audio tab and make sure export audio is checked. Occasionally it hasn't been checked, and that has resulted in me wasting time rendering out videos with no audio. Then click Browse and choose a destination to export the video. With that done, click Add to Render Queue. The render queue is a very useful feature because you can then change settings such as the codec and click Add to Render Queue again so that multiple videos will be rendered with different settings. Then select both jobs and click Start Render. And that's it for this DaVinci Resolve tutorial. I'm aware it was very quick, but hopefully I gave you an idea of what it's like to edit a video and, from start to finish, create a video in DaVinci Resolve. If there's anything else you'd like me to cover in DaVinci Resolve or just in general, then please leave a comment down below. If you found this video useful, then please consider subscribing and leaving a like. See you later.